students, I'm in front of the marker board. This is the endocrine diagram, and if you missed class today or otherwise haven't done this assignment yet, your job is to copy down exactly what I draw on the board. You're going to copy down on a handwritten piece of paper or onto a tablet or an iPad or whatever, make it into a PDF and upload. But at the end of the day, I need an image, a drawing of this drawing, whether you do it by hand and then take a photograph or you do it on your iPad, you choose and upload that to the assignment. So here we go. So this is the endocrine system. Sorry, that is not super dark, but hopefully I'm going to use, I have these three colors because I don't have my other markers with me, but it's going to be okay. The endocrine system, okay? And I'm going to write, so if you orient your paper that's kind of landscape instead of portrait mode, you'll fit these maybe 6 words across the top, and then underneath them I will include some other details, okay? So over here, I'm going to write stimulus. We'll come back to that. There's going to be 3 things that we'll finish up our time with. Round is not my friend. I'm just using different colors. You don't have to use these colors, but if you just use all black, that's fine with me too. So the endocrine system is a set of glands. Okay. Glands, and there's a set of glands. I'll come back and we'll populate the set of glands right here. Okay, those glands secrete hormones. Glands make and secrete hormones. Okay, I'll write some stuff here. Those hormones are released into the blood. Asterisk. There's an asterisk there because they're not always in the blood, but more on this later. Okay, I'm going to list some things here. They travel around in the blood until they reach their receptor. Okay. Hormones bind to a receptor. Okay. Hormones are released into the blood, they travel around the body, and they bind to a receptor. At this point, I'm not going to draw an arrow here. I'm just going to draw like a little line that connects these 2 things because these things are connected, but not like traveling or going anything. Okay, the receptor is on a target organ or cell. Okay, it's actually always on a cell, but we refer to it as a target organ. So you say target organ or target cell. And that's the thing that is responding to the hormone. It's receiving, this receptor is on or inside of this cell. Okay. Lastly, back to blue, this target organ or cell will have some effect. Okay, it will have some effect. All right, so now we have our kind of order sequence of events about how the endocrine system works. Okay, we have glands that are making hormones, they're releasing into the bloodstream. They travel around the body until they bind to a receptor. That receptor is located on or inside of a target organ, and it's going to have some effect. Okay? All right. Now, a couple things underneath here. The glands. Okay, now, during class, I was referring to the PowerPoint slides, which I can't do right now because I'm on the laptop. But if you remember the first opening set of slides in the endocrine PowerPoint, you will see how some of these categories map to some of those slides. So if you have your PowerPoint slides open, maybe page through the first opening set of slides there. Maybe there's slides 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, something like in that range. All right, glands, okay? The glands in the body are grouped according to where they're found. We have 3 in the head, we have 2 sets in the neck, we have 2 or 3 in the abdomen, and we have 1 in female, 1 in male in the pelvic or pubic region. Okay, so I'm going to walk ourselves through the sets of glands and where they're located. I'm going to write down their names and just a few comments for each. Okay, so first, at the very top, we're going to talk about the hypothalamus. 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 Hypo is because it is under the thalamus, okay, located in the brain. This is master regulator of the endocrine system. Next, we have the pituitary. Pituitary. And next to pituitary, we have to remember that there is an anterior, A-N-T dot, anterior, and a posterior, P-O-S-T dot. There's an anterior pituitary and a posterior pituitary. They're structurally very different. They release different hormones. They're kind of one thing, but there's a front part and a back part. Okay, pituitary. Last thing in the head is in the posterior, which is the pineal gland. Pineal gland, G dot for gland, that will always be my abbreviation. Pineal or pineal, depending on your pronunciation. Pineal gland, you might remember, releases our sleepy time hormone, melatonin. Okay, so these are 3 that are found in the head near the brain. Okay? Next 3 are in the neck region. Okay, the neck region, and those are the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland. Now, I'm going to put a 4 with a parentheses around them because there are actually 4 parathyroid glands. They are located posteriorly on the thyroid. Okay, the thyroid sits on the front of the neck. Okay, here, if somebody has a goiter, you might recognize it as kind of a enlarged lower part of their neck, typically due to an iodine insufficiency. We'll talk about this later, but the thyroid sits here. It's kind of a butterfly shape, and on the posterior of the thyroid are these 4 little dots that are the parathyroid glands. Okay, there's 4 of those. Okay, so 3 in the head, 2 in the neck, 2 in the abdomen. We're going to talk about the pancreas. Pancreas is a special dual function organ because it has legit function in both the digestive system and the endocrine system. Next, we have the adrenals. Adrenal glands. We don't call it the pancreas gland, we just call it the pancreas, but we do call it the adrenal glands, okay, or the adrenals. There are 2 of those. There's a right and a left. Okay, they sit on top of the kidneys. Okay, the kidneys look like this. The word that we use to refer to the kidneys are renal. Okay, we talk about kidney function, we talk about renal function. Renal is a word that we can use to refer to things about the kidney. So if we put something on top of the kidney, we add to the renal, it's adrenal. So that's how we remember where they're located. Okay, and since we have a right and a left kidney, we have a right and a left adrenal gland. The other thing to remember about the adrenal, I'm going to put 2 little dashes here, is that we have a cortex, an adrenal cortex, and an adrenal medulla. An adrenal cortex and an adrenal medulla. Okay? 3 in the head, 2 in the neck, 2 in the abdomen, and then 2 here, 1 for male, 1 for female. Of course, these are the ovaries in females, and the testes in males. Okay, also legitimately part of 2 systems, the endocrine system and the reproductive system. Okay, these are all what we call the primary endocrine organs. The main thing that they do is an endocrine function. Now, in one of the figures, one of the slides in the PowerPoint, you'll see a human figure, and there'll be some purple boxes. The boxes are headed with a purple bar across the top, and those are the primary endocrine organs. And then on the lower right side, there's a tan set of tan box or tan headed box, and what we call the secondary endocrine organs, including the heart, the kidney, and the thymus, and the gonads, I think, are included. I've included the gonads here, ovaries and testes. The secondary endocrine organs are organs that do something primarily that's part of another system. The heart, for example, the main thing that the heart does is pump blood. But did you know the heart produces hormones? Okay, natriuretic peptide. Okay, we have atrial natriuretic peptide, and you have brain natriuretic peptide. It's a heart hormone, but we don't think of the heart as an endocrine organ, although it has endocrine function. So we'll talk about those secondary endocrine function organs in their own chapters later. Okay, but in this chapter, we're going to focus on these glands. Now, next thing, hormones. Okay, hormones. I'm not going to list all of the hormones here because that list would be too long. But what I want to tell you is that there are three categories, okay, or classes, three structural classes of hormones. The first one is the peptide hormones or peptide or protein hormones. The second class are the amino acid derived hormones. The third and final class are the lipid derived or steroid. Lipid derived or steroid hormones. Okay, these are the three structural classes of our hormones. Okay, what's the relationship between these two? Okay, between the peptides and the amino acids. Well, if you've taken any biology at all, you know that peptides and proteins are made up of amino acids. So these amino acid derivatives are a single amino acid, or they were an amino acid that has had some functional group added to it, and now it is a hormone. Okay. And so these and these are in a similar structural class because they are, one's just a small subunit, one is many of them linked together in a peptide chain. The only difference between peptides and proteins is their size or their length. Okay, so if you have like 20 of them linked together, we call it a peptide, 20 or less. If we have more than 20, closer to like 200 to 2,000, then we have a protein. Okay, but all of these are similar in that they are hydrophilic. They are water soluble. Okay, hydrophilic, it's water soluble. So I'm going to put a little square around these categories here to remind us that they are in a similar chemical class. They're hydrophilic. Lipids are hydrophobic or water insoluble or lipid soluble. Okay, hydrophobic, and that's going to become important later because the nature of these hormones and their chemical class will determine where the receptor is located. Okay, for those that are hydrophilic, their receptor is located on the surface of the cell. Let's write that down right now. I'm talking about receptor location. Receptor location. There's two options. Okay. Either on the cell surface or intracellular. Okay, and these class of peptide or protein hormones or amino acid derivatives, they are going to bind to receptors that are on the cell surface, and these lipid derived or steroid are going to bind to intracellular. Now, there are some amino acid derived that bind to intracellular, so this one's a little bit tricky, okay, here. And And so there's an asterisk next to amino acid derived because sometimes there are some that bind to intracellular receptors. So be careful about that one. All right, glands make hormones. Hormones spill into the blood and they bind to a receptor. Okay? The chemical nature of the hormones determines where the receptors are located. Now, some notes here about blood. And I put an asterisk here because for the most part, the general mechanism for endocrine function is that a gland releases it, it flows out of the cell into the bloodstream, floats around the bloodstream, okay, until it finds the right target receptor on a target organ. There are a couple other mechanisms that are not necessarily associated with the endocrine system, but we still need to define these other mechanisms now. We call them the paracrine and the autocrine mechanism. Paracrine is a short distance or short acting hormone, and they typically don't enter the bloodstream. They're just in the interstitial space. Okay, so paracrine is a short traveling, short distance hormone. Autocrine means the same cell releases the hormone and it's basically regulating itself. Auto means self, so it's self-regulating, okay, which is a weird mechanism. There's 2 slides that talk about endocrine, paracrine, autocrine. Look for them and know those definitions. Okay. Ignore the ones that have the gap junctions. We're not going to talk about those until we talk about the cardiovascular system in the heart. All right, so if under blood, the thing I want you to write down is distance traveled, okay? Distance traveled. Distance traveled. Talk about things like endocrine, paracrine, and autocrine. All right, we're getting there, okay? So I'm going to repeat this paradigm, right? We have glands that make hormones, they travel around in the blood, most of them, bind to a receptor. The receptor is located on a target organ or cell, okay? And under this column here, the point that I want to make is some hormones act all over the body, meaning they are widespread in their action, and some hormones only act on very limited or select cells and organs. Okay, so let's write that down. The first thing I want you to know is, in some cases, 2 scenarios here. All cells respond, or many, okay? All or many cells, okay? It's a highly the responsiveness of that hormone is all over the body because the receptors are all over the body. Okay? The counter to this are a select few cells respond. Okay. Now, the example here I want to make for all cells respond is insulin. Okay. Something I say all the time is that every cell in your body needs glucose, okay? Because it needs to stay alive. We need to make ATP to have energy. So every cell needs to take in glucose, and to get glucose into every cell in your body, you need insulin. Insulin allows glucose to enter into a cell. Okay? Therefore, every cell in your body has an insulin receptor. So insulin receptor is everywhere. Everybody gets insulin. Every cell gets insulin. Right? So that's this example here. All cells respond to that hormone because all cells need that hormone. In other cases, for example, prolactin. Prolactin is for the promotion of lactation. Lactate is the milk sugar, so they're targeting cells and organs related to milk production. So that's a very refined and limited set of target organs. Okay? Not everywhere in the body. Your femur doesn't need prolactin, okay? So it's not going to contain the receptors for it. So it's a very limited and select set of targets. So that's what I wanted to say here. There's more to be said, but that's what I'm going to write down. Last thing here is the effect, okay? Now, the effect, one of the earliest slides in the slide deck, in the PowerPoint slides for endocrine system, there's two general buckets that I say that hormones fall into. The first bucket is homeostatic regulation, okay, managing the homeostatic levels of all kinds of things, okay, blood sugar, calcium levels, and metabolism, and all kinds of things, okay, blood pressure. Those homeostatic management is performed by hormones. It's the first major thing that hormones do. The second major collection of things that hormones do is to regulate the major life stage transitions from infancy to childhood, from childhood into puberty, from puberty into adulthood. Those are the major life cycle transitions, and those transitions are governed by hormones, okay? Growth hormone and testosterone and estrogen have all kinds of important hormones that help us develop, okay? Those are the two major themes or things that hormones do. And so there's lots of different effects here. So don't write anything here, okay? I'm just going to leave this open for now because there are too many. There are too many effects, and they're highly variable. So we're establishing this paradigm. In the endocrine system, we have glands. They produce hormones. The hormones travel around in the bloodstream normally, and they bind to a receptor. That receptor is located on a target cell or a target organ, and they have some effect. Okay? We're going to go all the way over to this first column here that I started with, and we're going to talk about stimulus. Okay? For these glands, what is the trigger? What is the green light? What is the thing that tells these glands to start secreting? Are they always secreting? Are they constitutively active? Or they only get turned on at certain times? Well, there's three classes of stimuli that you need to know about. Okay, three classes: 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we're going to talk about the humoral. We're going to talk about the neural. And we're going to talk about hormonal. Okay, first one is humoral. Humoral, not humorous, but humoral. Switch this over here so you can kind of see me a little better. Okay, humoral means that we're measuring things in the body fluids, typically blood, but not always blood. I use the analogy of a dipstick in an engine. Okay, if you operate a car or a truck and you need to check on the engine oil, because that's something that you should do. Now, normally we just go to the service center and they take care of everything, and we don't care. But if you care about your car's engine, the dipstick is this long metal stick, and you dip it down into the engine block, and if there's oil in the bottom, it will come up to a certain level. You pull out the dipstick, you look at it, and you say, oh, I have enough oil, don't need to add any today. Or you could stick the dipstick in and pull it out, and you look at it, oh, oil is low, I need to add more oil. The dipstick is the way of measuring how much oil am I doing, how much oil do I have, do I need to add any more. It's kind of a humoral mechanism because there's cells that are detecting levels of glucose or levels of calcium or levels of blood pressure, and that's a mechanism whereby some of these glands might get activated because they're always acting like a dipstick. They're always measuring things in the body fluids. The second one is neural, meaning our brain or our spinal cord, our nervous system tells the gland to respond. This is actually how adrenaline is released, right? We have some fight or flight response. We see a bear or a snake or something dangerous. Our brain receives that information. We have a nerve or a neuron axon that will go to our adrenal medulla, tell the adrenal medulla to release adrenaline, epinephrine, and that will also serve to elicit part of the fight or flight response because we get an adrenaline rush. That adrenaline helps prepare the body for doing stuff. The last mechanism is the hormonal, and under this one we talk about the hormonal cascades. And so we're going to talk about the HPA and the HPT and the HPG axes. Okay, so the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis, and the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. Okay, there's three major axes that we need to talk about. The main principle here is that hormones trigger other hormones that trigger other hormones. There's this cascading effect, okay? And so humoral mechanism, neural mechanism, or hormonal mechanism. These are the three major classes of triggers that will tell these glands to respond. Not all of them respond to the same thing, but I will tell you some more of the details. If you understand this paradigm about how the endocrine system works, you will understand hormones and glands. Okay, we're going to go through the remainder part of the chapter. I'm going to start at the top. We're going to start walking through these individual glands and talk about the specific hormones that each of them secrete. And then we will talk about the effect that those hormones produce. Okay, what cells are they targeting and what's the effect? So we're talking a lot about insulin. We're going to talk about thyroid hormone, T3 and T4. We're going to talk about calcitonin, all kinds of things going on. For the assignment, make sure you've written down everything I've written down, okay? Take a photograph of that or just make like a PDF version of your digital drawing that you've made in your iPad, etc., and upload that to Moodle or to Canvas if we're in Canvas by then. Made it. Good job.